Hi, this is a demonstration video for a tool that I built that uploads forecast information that we get from our customers into our Syteline ERP system. So here's the application started up, and you'll notice here I've got four tabs, one for each of the customers that we currently receive forecast information for. And I use the tab layout because as we would get information from other customers, that allows me to go on ahead and add additional tabs so that information can then be uploaded into our ERP system. Now the issue that I had with that I was looking to solve with this program was each customer provides us this forecast information, and the forecast information is basically just data containing quantities and dates that they're seeing are going to be required from us. And each customer was offering that data in a different format, but typically it was pretty easy to get that information into an Excel format if it wasn't just if it wasn't already inside an Excel format. And so the missing link that we had was, all right, we've got all this forecast information inside Excel spreadsheets spread out throughout the organization, but we need to present one comprehensive view so that others in the organization who don't have those spreadsheets can also see what the customer demand is. And that's what this tool did. That standard view was a forecast record inside Syteline. So the gist of what this application does is it takes the information from all those separate forecast spreadsheets and uploads it as a forecast record into Syteline ERP. And so with that, I'll go on ahead and get started, and we'll do a couple samples here. Okay, so let's start with this customer, MTD. Now, the application will work. This path needs to indicate the file that it's located in, and in this case, I have that information, in this folder. So this URL is this, and it's pointing to this sheet, and it's an Excel sheet, and this is this one is in 2012 format, but it should work 2010 as well. And I believe it would also work with 2003, although I haven't tested that. So from here, you can start the application in two ways. One, you can simply type in a range name in here, alright? And this sheet, if I was to look at it, looks like this. So here's all the information and quantities. And so what they have is they have all of this sort of data on the top, and here's the columns with dates and quantities that they're looking for these items. And so the challenge of the application is to take this information then and turn it into a forecast record. So the first step, of course, is to get the sheet. And I have documented that in these documents for how to go on ahead and download those spreadsheets. So I'm not going to cover that in this video. But from there, we need to get this data here into a format that's going to fit this data here. Here's what we're looking for on the forecast records. We got an item, quantity, date, customer number, warehouse, price, and then source. All right. In the price field, we pull directly from Syteline. Okay, so we're not grabbing the price that's listed in this sheet. Okay, so with that, let's go on ahead and let's take a look at what happens when we hit enter here. Okay. Now you'll see there's no ranges listed in this, and that's because we don't have a range inside the sheet. The first thing that needs to happen is we need to create a range on the spreadsheet here that will um, that will circle basically all of this information. That's what a range is. I mean, everything inside Excel is a range. So I'm going to do that. Okay? Okay, so here we go. Just going ahead and create my range. And I've circled all that information. And I will just type in here planner. It's going to look for a range named planner every time. Well, let me take that back. You can actually put any range. I typically use the range planner. So we'll go on ahead and leave it at that. And just press enter. And that's created my named range. And you can always see your named ranges because they'll exist right here. Okay? So I mean, in this case, we could delete this and close, and then we'll go on ahead and make that planner range. And now you see, oh, there it is again. So now we've created the named range. And now in the application, when I go to the end of the text box, I will be able to see that range, but I need to save the changes I made on my sheet. So there we go. There's my planner range. Now again, if you have the range already created, and you go in here and put your cursor at the end and press the enter key, it'll pull in the ranges. Or you could have just as easily typed planner in there, and when you click this button, view or add to forecast, it'll grab that range. So it's just looking inside that checkbox. You can either use the application to populate this checkbox with a list of the ranges that are available in that workbook, which in this case we only have one, and it's showing you that. Or you can just type in the range name. It doesn't matter, as long as the information is accurate. Now, once you have the appropriate sheet with the range and the appropriate information for the given customer loaded in here, there's actually a two-step process that occurs. So one, clicking this view button populates this grid view with the records that it sees inside the spreadsheet. Okay, and the second stage is checking this box here, add to forecast. Okay, so when you check that box, that takes the records and the data that it sees inside this grid view and populates them into this grid view. And this grid view is the list of records that are actually uploaded into Syteline's forecast form. Okay, so we'll go with the step one on this, and let's go on ahead and click view. Okay. And here it is. Okay. So all we did was we took that information that was in this spreadsheet, and you could go on ahead and check this line by line, and populated it into this grid view. And here you can note that you can change any of these values if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but it's editable. It's also sortable. So I mean, here I'm sorting by any one of these fields. So that's that's available. Looks like I did not make the columns interchangeable. Maybe I will in a future revision. But the one thing to take note of that is pretty important is this field here, location to customer numbers. So before I talk too much about this, let's look inside Syteline at what this is actually for. Okay, let me start Syteline up. So here is the forecast form inside Syteline. Alright, and you'll see a couple things in here. One, here's the item. Here's the unit of measure. This is where the item description goes. This is the warehouse and the warehouse description, and this is the customer number. Okay, and the name of the customer will be filled in here. And here's forecast date, and some quantity information, availability information, and that sort of stuff. So the pretty much the values that we're looking to populate are right here. The original quantity, that's going to be a quantity from our spreadsheet. The customer and the warehouse. Okay, so as well as the item. Those are the main things that we're looking to populate, and you can see them here. Here's item, quantity. This is going to go to the field here. Original quantity. Date is our forecast date. Customer number. Now this customer number is where this stuff starts to occur. Okay. So let me come back to that. We've got warehouse, which we see that field right here, warehouse. And price, I put the price in there because this information is not used in the forecast, but I want it there because I take the information from here, I copy and paste it, and then I send it on out so we can start to see, I can easily total up the forecasted value and hand that out in a spreadsheet for others to view. So while I was working through the application, it was just another field that I thought, hey, I'm going to grab that and put it in here so that I can extrapolate some information. And this price field is being pulled from the item pricing screen inside Syteline. So the other spot where you can set prices is the customer. It is the customer contract pricing field, and that's not what this is pulling from. This just pulls from item pricing field. Source is another field that is not required for the forecast, but what that is going to be used to do is indicate where these records are coming from. So you see here I've got a tab from MTD. Well, when I create my when I turn this data into a list of forecast records, it's going to have a source of MTD. And the same thing over here when I go to HOP and I create a bunch of forecast records from the data contained in here, it's going to say HOP and Briggs and so on. So this was a way to differentiate among the list of forecast items that are created who their source is, what customer are they coming from, so that I could, when looking to aggregate, I could easily say, okay, this entire forecast is from this customer, and this entire forecast is from this customer. So these fields are not inside as a forecast inside the forecast record, but they are part of my application, so that when I actually do the forecast upload and so on, I can copy the information out of here and make a more useful report than if I didn't have them. Okay. So before we get too far into this customer number, I want to do a little quick explanation of this warehouse right here. And to do that, we're going to need to look at Syteline's item field. Okay, so we'll grab one and walk in here. So give me 1 second. Now the reason I was concerned with the warehouse field was because down the road we're going to be looking at MRP and or APS, and I know that jobs and orders and all those things are going to be created on a warehouse basis. So we've got outside services that are performed that we have set up as warehouses in our system, and that's where those outside services, that's where the inventory goes to for those outside services to be performed. So what I'm going to want down the road is to have a customer order created in the warehouse from where that item is expected to ship. Okay, so it all needed to flow properly, and there wasn't a mechanism to specify in the system where where is this where's the primary warehouse where this inventory is located. Okay, so we've got this customer and we've got this item that we make for this customer, and I want to have a customer order being created when the demand is such that it's showing that I need an order from there. I want that order being created in the appropriate warehouse. So I had to have this field populated. So what I did was I went into some of the user-defined fields inside Syteline, and I added um, this field right here, primary ship from warehouse. Okay, and this is the value that the application actually is going to pull from. So here I'm looking at this item, and I can show you how that works. This is this item, and now I've gone in here and I'm on that item record that it's going to pull from, and I'm going to type in a warehouse name. Now, one thing to note is that this is just a text box. So there's no validation saying, "Oh, yeah, this is a good warehouse or not." There's nothing like that at all. So you can type anything in the text box. So it's important that you're actually putting an appropriate warehouse name inside the system. Okay. And oops, let me save this record since I made a change to it. On a side note, these user-defined fields are pretty handy because, as you saw there, the system knew when I changed something. I mean, I don't have to do any, really detailed programming or anything like that. I can just use an extra field and all the same functionality exists as on this form. When I edit it, oh, it shows that it's modified, and so I can go ahead and get rid of that edit and so on. So I've put main in here, and now what I want to do is let's just go on ahead before I do too much explaining on this add to forecast, and we'll just add it. All right, and then we're going to run into one other thing that I'll need to explain in the way. Right here, this is the thing. So what occurs is inside Syteline, you cannot put a forecast item in a past date. So the forecast is entirely looking forward. The database doesn't let you save that. So the application checks, and if it sees that there is a forecast quantity that occurs in the past, it throws this exception. It says, "Oh, you can't do it," and it stops right there. So from here, it's up to the user to say, okay, that's okay or that's not. Either I'm trying to upload an old spreadsheet, or and so I need to go get the new spreadsheet and try this again, or you know what? I know there's old records in there. I don't care about them. I'm going to have it remove those old forecast records, and that's what that checkbox is. Okay, so checking this checkbox when we try to convert these records into a forecast record, we'll look for any old records and just discard them. Okay. So to try and re-add these again, we have to uncheck this. That's important. I mean, just you have to uncheck that, which if there was some records populated in there before it threw the error, you'd have a couple records in here, and so you need to back those out, and that's what that does. If we had some actual records in there, unchecking that would back it out, and then make sure this is checked, and now we'll go ahead and pop them back in. Okay. So let's see now if we can find. Oh, looks like everything is in main. So that was probably not a good example. Let's go ahead and try this again. Okay. This time we'll say test WHSE. We'll try that one. That way we should be able to find it a little bit easier. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure we've got some quantity in there. So looks like, yeah, no, there's no quantities. Oh, we got a month's quantity. So we should actually see some quantities in here. I don't need to add a quantity, which I could easily have done just by clicking on one of these and putting a number in there. So let's go add that to the forecast again, and we'll look for that warehouse that we had. And you know what? Maybe it'd be easier if I just do this. I had a little bit of a issue there. Once the change is made on the items form, you need to go back in here and reload it. Just by pressing the view button. Again, that'll repopulate this record so that when you go in ahead and click that add to forecast, the new warehouse will show up in there from whatever you changed in the items form. So you need to click the view button again, and that's how it's going to go and grab the new information from here. All right. And so if I scroll on down here, let's look for that record. I think it's right there. And we can see. Here it is, 6470426C. 271, I'm sorry, right there. And I have my test warehouse. So that's how that functionality was put in on the item. Okay. So we covered the uploading of the spreadsheet with by using a range, and the creation of the range in here, and we covered the two-step process that it goes on. The first being loading the information inside here, the second being getting the forecast records in here. We covered how the warehouse gets populated. We also covered the how Syteline handles, well, or doesn't handle, chooses to not handle old records being uploaded into the forecast by using this checkbox, and the use of this checkbox to do the action where we take the information here and create a forecast object. So the one thing that we needed to come back to now was this box here, the location to customer numbers. So the warehouse is where MRP or APS would go on ahead and look to create the customer order from. So we've got the warehouse functionality in here, and now here's this portion here, and this is the actual customer number. So in many cases, you might have a customer, and that customer might have multiple locations, and each location it may or may not, most likely would like to be billed for only the product that they're receiving, sort of as a separate entity. So inside the forecast portion, that's accommodated for right here by the customer number, and so the application does that as well. I've got this sheet from this customer, and they've got these multiple different locations where they want this product to go to, and each one of these locations is a separate customer inside our system. So the application needs to take that into account in order to create the orders properly, because when the order is created from this forecast, it's going to create that order not only for that warehouse but for that customer. So I want to make sure that those are the right customers inside there. Okay. So that's what this text box does. It says, hey, I've got this location. What's the customer number? And I can perform the cross-reference here. So, here I've got these records, and you'll see inside here. Oh wait, it's putting in a customer number. What's going on with that? Well, I'll show you. I've created a default value field that will put this number in for this customer if you don't specify a different one in here. So I've created an XML sheet that it reads from for that default customer number, and I'll give you a little bit of a look at that. Okay, so these values are actually not hard-coded in the application. They're customizable. And if you look in the directory of the application, you'll see these sorts of files in there, XML files. Um, and these XML files are what contains the information as far as defaults for these locations that the application sees. And the default customer is specified in the config file. So I went on ahead and opened this config file for the program, and you can see in here that I've specified um, MTD's got a default warehouse, and it's got a default customer number value. So right here, if I'm not, I'm specifying if I don't have that the field filled out, which I didn't, and I think we saw that beforehand inside Syteline. I didn't have, you know, I have no warehouse filled in here, and if I go on ahead and rerun the app, you'll see that I still have all of my records with warehouses in there. And if you looked at each one of these respective items, you would find out that there's no warehouse in that field. And so what I did was, since I needed to have the warehouse filled in, I created a default value and I placed it in here for the warehouse. And I did the same thing for the customer number. Those are two values um, that the application needs to create records, so I needed to make sure that they're there, but I wanted them to be customizable, so I threw them in the config file, and and anyone who's using the application can go on ahead and change that default if that's not the proper default that they want. So it's not hard coded in the application; it is customizable. And in this scenario, we've got the warehouses populating in. Um, these items would have a warehouse in there. So if I go and look inside the system, I'll see that that one's got a warehouse PPI in its field. But any of these other items that don't have, they're going to be main, because that's the default warehouse that we've got specified in here, right there. And it's the same thing for the customer number. Any one of these locations, we do not have a customer number associated with them, um, and so it's got to have a default, and that's what it's pulling in for its default right here, which is why you see it all loaded throughout here. Every single one of these is 881, because we've not set any sort of customer number. Now let's go ahead and try. Let's pull these back and say I wanted to have a different customer number in here. Say I wanted that one. Okay. And now this value and changing this value is going to affect a different file. So this is going to affect the directory that I had right here with each one of these customers has their own XML file that contains defaults for these customer locations. And the reason I did it that way was because from a user's perspective, I didn't want to have them constantly having to go on ahead and re-enter the same information. So I wanted it to be somewhat static, and yet I wanted it to be customizable. So I put it into an XML file that the application pulls from after they've entered it in once, so that they don't have to continue to enter it in again. So, and we'll see that happen. I can stop this application, after let's go on ahead and when I can stop the application, restart it up. It's going to pull that value back in there. It'll read that config file, and the values get stored on clicking this button. Okay, so here you can see now it's changed the default, and if I go and look at this site, well, it says it changed the the files changed since the last time, because if you look here, which is the value we changed here, there was no corresponding customer number. Alright, we've got a site, but we've got no corresponding customer number. Now when we refresh, and that's what this is actually do, do you want to refresh it because it's changed since the last time? Now I can see, oh, here's my customer number. Okay, and that happens when you take this when you convert that record from this dialog box into a forecast item. All right. Now we'll do one other thing. We'll stop the application here, and then let me start it back up. And we'll load that, and I'm not even gonna press the view, but I'm just gonna click add to forecast because that'll do it all in one shot for me. I want to make sure that remove my old forecast records is selected. And you'll see, oh, it pulled in that customer number again. And all in one fell swoop, it grabbed the records from the Excel file from that range and put them into forecast objects and sourced them, and pulled this default value for the customer number and put them where appropriate. So the idea being, once a user starts entering in the forecast data and entering it appropriately, there isn't going to be that redundancy of constantly re-entering customer numbers and so on. They can just use the defaults or set their defaults in there once, and then as time goes on, they don't need to refill those fields in. So I mean, that could be a considerable time saver. So that's how the application was built. Now let's go ahead and populate some of these other tabs that I've got pre-created. Okay, we'll go ahead and view those, and you'll see the same thing. Here's some multiple locations. Let's see, we'll add these guys in, and we'll view them. Now, all of these are going to be older records, so I'm going to need to check this box on all of these guys to clean out any of the old records before I add them in. But I wanted to point out how this thing is working in the background. Let's go ahead and we'll remove this customer's forecast from this box, and we'll add this guy. And we'll go here and we'll add this guy. And we'll go here and we'll add this guy. And then we'll go back here and add this guy. Now what we're doing is we're separately adding each one of these customers to the forecast records. Alright? And that's what that's doing. So I can take, here we're looking at Briggs. Now watch, because I'm going to go and I'm going to remove them. And poof, they're gone. And the same thing, let's look at, here's John Deere. Poof, they're gone. So this box is only going to be populated with the records that have that checkbox set in here. HOP, poof, they're gone. MTD, poof, they're gone. So that second stage is put in place, and it allows you to add and remove these records from the forecast as needed, and put them into place. So now that everything's done, uploading is pretty trivial. Here we'll remove the forecast, and it's simply done by pushing this upload to Syteline button. Now the only other checkbox that's here is this: delete prior forecast data. Now what that's going to do is any of the records that exist inside the forecast area here, if this is checked, it's going to go on ahead and delete every single record inside there. If it's not checked, it's just going to add to it. So Depending on what you wanted to do, it'll accommodate both of those. So if you wanted to go on ahead and do this one customer's forecast and then add it on up there, and then do the next one and add that on up to there, you wouldn't want to delete that information every time you did the upload. So in that scenario, you would leave this unchecked, add this customer, go to this one, uncheck it, and so on. But in this scenario, we're just going to delete everything in here prior to, and then upload that information to it. And just click that button. You'll note that the application is multi-threaded, so the user interface isn't frozen while I'm trying to do this. If I click it again, it just says, hey, waiting for that background to finish. So it's not going to let you simultaneously upload two sets of forecast data. It'll just process in the background on a different thread. And as soon as it's done, it'll set up a confirmation dialog box saying, hey, the forecast has been completed. And it may take a decent amount of time. My connection is a little bit slow. I'm doing this remotely, but it does take quite a bit in the background for this thing to process. So I'm going to go on ahead and pause the video while waiting for this to upload. And here it is, the confirmation dialog saying the upload has succeeded and the changes were successfully loaded. So if we were to go on ahead and look inside the system, we'll see here that all those records have been uploaded. So it looks like we've got quite a few, 504 forecast records that were uploaded. Okay, and all of these are for customer 881. So 881, 881, and they're all formatted correctly, and everything works as it should. Now, just to put a plug in there for myself, this was something that we used to pay someone just about full time to do, was take information from this Excel sheet and populate and make changes to the forecast. Um, now, and so that was a couple hours as these changes would roll in. They would spend a significant portion of their week updating these forecast records, and it would be entirely manual and tedious. So this application shrinks the whole process down into takes me about a half an hour to do. So it was quite a savings for our organization, and put a pretty comprehensive forecast in place. So that about ends everything that there is to show about this app. So of course, any other questions on it, feel free to contact me via email or stop by my office. And with that, that ends the movie.